We hope. Good afternoon, evening. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's a nice group. It's always great when cast members are here and actually want to hear from the playwright. I don't know where they are. Sorry. Maybe Bob's in the cast. I don't know. Welcome. I think you all know what behind the scenes is, but I'm going to tell you. First, I'm Jason Loewith. I'm the artistic director here. If you don't know me, behind the scenes is our core contextualization program, which is to say it's just a fun opening night kind of event that we do anything from panel discussions about the themes of the play to demonstrations, anything that sort of will give folks a new way into the play. Whenever we're working with a living playwright, we invite them, and it is always
allegedly living.
A happily living. We invite them because obviously to have a chance to talk with a playwright is what's most exciting when it's a play that is relatively new, which this one is. So we are very proud and delighted to have Prince Gomolvilas here with us, the playwright of Brothers From We will do a Q&A afterwards. Usually this is the point where I ask how many of you have seen the show, but none of you have seen the show. Because tonight is the first performance. I think everybody here probably knows, but just in case you don't, we had a little bit of, I was going to say the C word. It's so funny. The C word is now something different, isn't it? We had a little bit of C word. But I saw the Invited Dress rehearsal last night, and so did Prince, actually. And what you're about to see tonight is fantastic. How many of you are actually coming tonight? Almost all of you. Okay, great. And many of you are coming other times, so all good. Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome, Prince. Thank you so much for taking the trip out from California to be with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm surprised so many people are here.
Oh my God.
Yes.
They saw your name and they were like, I must come. All right, let me brag on you a little bit.
Okay.
I'm going to read some of what you have written, and then I'm going to say, so Prince is a writer for stage and screen, a speaker prone to mischief making, and an educator who inspires to the point of sheer absurdity. He claims to be, and I need to know if this is still true, claims to be the world's only Thai American playwright and dares you to find another one. He frequently writes comedies with a supernatural twist, along with the occasional drama to shake things up. Recurring themes include the state of Asian America, the immigrant experience, the intersection of culture and sexual identity, the trauma of displacement, the nature of loss and grief, and in the words of Erasure, the infinite complexities of love. I think all of those, with the possible exception of sexual identity, are in this play. I mean,
Sure,
there is
yeah.
sexual
Yeah.
identity.
I mean,
Everybody has
everything. It's in everything.
It in everything. It's true. His work has been produced all over the country and all over the world. He's been commissioned. He gets commissioned a ton. I mean, and I want to actually ask you about the world in commissioning as a playwright.
Sure.
Asking for a friend. Are you still writing the Oscar plays, which seem fantastic?
I am. I'm working on the 10th and final Oscar play, which is a series of plays for youth that have been touring elementary schools for the past almost 20 years now.
It's amazing. So great. I didn't know that about you until I started doing all the research. Nor did I know that you are a performer. Which makes me want to totally book you in. Storyteller, I want to see the jukebox stories, a storytelling, song singing, bingo playing, theatrical extravaganza you created with musician Brandon Patton that has toured theaters, bars, colleges, comedy clubs, coffee houses, music venues, bowling alleys, and many other places.
It was a terrible show.
It was a terrible show. All right. We won't be bringing you for that. But I thought it was cool. You can learn a ton more about Prince if you Google his name and you go to the video part. You will see so many podcasts and videos and things about Prince and his cats. But especially, I want to call attention to Mind the Gap, his 10-year-old TEDx talk. It's sort of 14 minutes of really fantastic thoughts about being a playwright and integrity and controversy, and it's also very fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now
for
I
being
want to
here.
say some things about you.
Go ahead.
You're awesome.
Thank you. Awesome. Good. Let's start talking about Brothers Paranormal.
Sure.
You describe it as, and I'm again going to read, two Thai American brothers launch a ghost hunting business in order to capitalize on the nationwide increase in sightings of Asian-looking ghosts. When the siblings investigate the home of an African American couple who were displaced by Hurricane Katrina and who are antagonized by one very terrifying spirit, everyone's notions of reality, fantasy, and sanity clash against the shocking truth. You have this great opportunity now in front of a bunch of people who are, almost all of them, about to see it tonight. Are there ways you want this group of people to think about your play? What questions does the play pose in your mind that you want folks to be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think different people take different things away from the play. There's such a swath of different types of people, characters in the play going through so many different things. So I just think that audiences get a lot out of just kind of reflecting on the themes and the things that happen in the play that may have relevance to their own lives.
Yeah. There are a lot of themes in this play.
Yeah.
You have said, again, I've always been interested in the tension between what is real and what is not only in terms of the laws of the physical universe, but also through the world as we know it, how we perceive things and how other people perceive us. All of my research explores the play's disparate themes: the trauma of displacement from one's country of origin, from post-Katrina New Orleans, from the corporeal world, the high incidence of mental health issues among Asian immigrants, and the different ways in which people cope with incredible loss. I would love to sort of look at those a little bit one by one.
I said that?
You said that, or maybe that was...
Or was ChatGPT, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it was. Yeah, I'm wondering if you're nervous about it. Are you nervous about ChatGPT in your talk?
I don't know. I think that there's so much doom and gloom talk around AI that I think it's just to the point of absurdity. I mean, just people are just like, it's the end of everything, basically. I don't know, but speaking of commissions, one commission that I'm working on is actually a play about AI. So a small theater up in the San Francisco Bay Area commissioned me to write a play dealing with AI. The lead character has to be a scientist of some sort. So I'm deep in exploration of that right now. And it's really hard to find really kind of moderate views about AI. Yeah. It's either AI, it's mostly AI is the end of everything, and it's basically the end of the world.
We should just give up now.
But yeah, most of it is that. So I'm just trying to kind of get in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I think the truth is closer to the middle.
I'm sure. Yeah. I hope. Yeah. So talk to me about your fascination with horror. What kind of horror have you been a fan of? Where did you first encounter horror that you fell in love with?
Okay, so the first experience with horror I ever had was watching a film from the 70s called I don't know if you remember, the Amityville Horror, that I watched when I believe I was 6 years old. And it happened because my dad was taking me to the movies. So this was back in Indiana. He was taking me to the movies, and he really wanted to, I can't remember which Rocky it was. It was like Rocky 2 or Rocky 3. It was like Rocky. He really wanted to see Rocky 2. It was one of the Rockies. And I'm not into sports. I have no interest in boxing. And at 6 years old, I threw a tantrum on the sidewalk, and I refused to go see this Rocky movie with him. And as a threat, he said, "Well, the only other movie playing here is the Amityville Horror. So if you're not going to see Rocky, we're seeing this movie." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I want to see the Amityville Horror." And it scared the hell out of me. I was like really traumatized for like weeks. I slept with my light on. But that was my first experience with horror, anything. But I don't know. I kind of pop psychologize it a little bit, my interest in horror, because growing up in the Midwest in the 70s, as really, from what I remember being the only Asian kid, there is this sense of isolation that you feel, or that I felt out there. And when you feel that, you kind of want to escape the reality of that isolation as much as possible. And I found it in these kind of like fantasy worlds. So anything that wasn't reality was really interesting to me. And for some reason, I just gravitated more and more towards sci-fi fantasy, but then also horror. So even today, I'm interested in like really kind of like sophisticated horror, but then also really the lowbrow stuff for some reason, because it's just a visceral experience.
Yeah, it's notoriously difficult to make horror work in live theater.
Sure.
So I don't know what my question is, but what are the keys to making it work for a live audience, in front of a live audience, do you think?
Well, I think this is writing this play is coming after kind of years and years of. So back in California, we have. I'm sure you've heard of Universal Studios, but every October they have this thing called Halloween Horror Nights, where you go and the entire park is overrun by actors who are dressed up as, vampires and zombies, and they like jump out behind bushes to scare you as you're walking through this fog-filled park. And the park is full of mazes, right? So you would go to from one maze to another that was themed differently. So there's like the Friday the 13th maze, which would be sort of like a forest theme, and then like a bunch of Jasons with axes would come out and scare you. So it was sort of like a long time of like experiencing that kind of visceral fear live, which is very, very different from sitting in at home watching a horror movie, right? So I knew that it could be done, but of course there are certain limitations. I mean, you can't really kind of get in people's faces collectively in a theater like this. So it is kind of developing the creep factor more than the jump scare factor. Right?
Yeah. Although this play has a little bit of both of them. Which is something I love.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about it. One of the many things I love about it. And
sound design helps a lot.
Sound design does help a lot. Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about ghosts?
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you. So Eastern and Western attitudes, obviously, about death and what comes after differ a lot. Felix in the play, as I was watching last night, I was hearing Felix is one of the the husband of the husband and wife characters who had fled from Katrina, and he's a paramedic or EMT, and he talks about, I listened to it much more, I heard it more clearly last night. He talks about coming to the realization that he's not there to help people, to save people's lives, and it's not even so much about helping them die as much as escorting them to what's next. If you don't mind me asking, I'm curious, what are your beliefs in regards to what happens next?
Oh man,
you don't have to answer what I'm curious.
I don't know. I hope it's not nothing. That's all I know. Yeah.
All right, yeah, I totally hope so too. Did you model the ghost on any particular kind of ghost? And I know that in Thailand there are a number of particular ghosts that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just in terms of like public consciousness of sort of Asian horror ghosts, it's usually the woman with the long black hair that goes terrorizing everybody. And this is kind of like true across Asian cultures. Popularized by The Ring, The Grudge, and all that stuff that came to the United States. But even before that, like way back, this image of the kind of long-haired female ghost has stretched back for decades and centuries. Like the most famous Thai ghost that kids get told about is Mae Nak, who is a woman with long black hair who sort of like you get told these stories when you're a kid about this woman who's going through a lot, but it's really scary to hear about it, but that story goes back a long time, and in Thailand there have been dozens, if not hundreds, of adaptations of that story because it's such in that culture's consciousness.
Right. I read about another ghost. I hope I'm not mispronouncing it. Phi Tai Hong, particularly angry ghost, a woman who suffered a violent or sudden death.
Yeah.
So, have you, in your experience of this play, which now this is what, the eighth or ninth
It's
production?
production 8. Yeah.
It's production 8. And you've seen all of them so far?
I've seen all of them, yeah.
Amazing. In your experience, have you been surprised by folks' reactions to the horror in the play as you've traveled the country?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I watch audiences collectively gasp and jump in all the same places, and all the kind of like realizations that they make emotionally in the same places. So it's great that I've been able to, after many drafts, been able to calibrate it so that it works just wherever it goes.
You started, right, speaking of many drafts, I read somewhere you went through about 12 drafts. You started writing this in 2011 or so, 2012, your first draft, and the first production was 2019 at East West Players in Los Angeles.
No, actually, first production was 2019 Pan Asian Rep in New York.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Is that trajectory of about 7 years from first draft to first production, have you found that to be common for your work? Is that how you like to work? Is that too long?
For me, it's uncommon and incredibly frustrating because an almost 10-year gap between the time you finish the play to its premiere, it's in the life of a playwright, I don't know how many more plays I got. It's like I can't wait another 10 years before something that I really felt was. And believe me, I know when I'm writing good work, and I know when I'm writing bad work, and I throw out the stuff that's bad. Like half of everything I write, I'm like, I don't think that's good enough. But when you hit on something where I think it's firing on all cylinders and having to wait that long for a theater to discover it, or recognize it, then it's hard. It's hard. But you can only kind of market so much and tell people so much about it, and then even those people you tell, it's the people, the theaters that don't produce it, have never heard of it. So it's like, how do you get it into those hands? And who knows how that happens? It's very mysterious. Yes.
I know.
How does it happen?
Yeah. Do you feel, since I'm going a little bit away from Brothers Paranormal, have you felt a shift since, I don't know, over the past 4 years, or even since 2019 in the first production of the play, have you found a shift in the way American theater is working in terms of your your navigation through it? Do you feel
sure.
like it's?
I mean, I don't know. This is a theater crowd, so you know that within the last few years that there has been kind of like a social reckoning in the theater around race and diversity and all that stuff. So that has been the interest in race and intersectionality has been more prominent over the last few years. So maybe that's one of the reasons why sort of like a lot of theaters are actively now seeking out that stuff. But I was thinking about this even before the Brothers Paranormal. Was like right at the beginning of my career, I was kind of writing about racial intersectionality because that was really interesting to me, because way back when I started like 20 years ago, when there were discussions about race in this country, they were usually discussions centered around the question of black and white, right? There was very little discussion around other cultures coming in and being part of that conversation. So I started writing about that many years ago and continued to write about that.
Yeah, I wonder if you can actually put your finger on that a little bit. I'm sort of jumping now, which is great. I mean, an earlier play of yours called B, about an invisible Korean American man and a middle-aged African American woman who can somehow see him. I mean, the Asian American, African American intersection is something that seems to be very interesting to you, and obviously something that happens here in this play, or at least is part of the fabric of this play. Can you put your finger on why in particular that has been of interest to you?
Yeah, and I'll even get more specific than that. More specific is Asian male, black female, and not necessarily, sometimes romantically, but not necessarily, but just those two types of characters have been very interesting to me. I think part of it is I don't know if you remember back in the day, I think this dating app called OkCupid. Like they commissioned this sort of like study about just data from their site, and one of the interesting things that came out of the data was sort of like the least messaged sort of types of people on the site were Asian men and Black women. So I don't know. It just hearing that I don't know made me angry or upset. And it's like, okay, well then let with whatever ability that I have, how do I put those people into the conversation? Because it's not just sort of like you look at OkCupid and you go, that's an outright kind of like supposed rejection, sort of like a romantic level, but then just think about sort of like macro what that means, in terms of just society as a whole, just even outside the realm of kind of romantic interest, right? And how horrible that must be. So I was like, okay, well, what's one way just to empower those people? It's like, oh, well, let's center those stories,
right? And let them sort of let them explore their shared and different kinds of displacement as well, yes. Right? I mean, here you have, you've set up it's such a fascinating chessboard that you set up at the start of this play. You've got a Thai American family, Visarut and Tasani, who are the older son and mother who were born in Thailand, and then the younger brother Max, who was born in the United States. And then, as we said, you have Felix and Delia, an African-American couple who fled Katrina. So displaced from the place they used to live. We learn in the course of the play, I don't think it's a spoiler. I don't think we spoil anything by saying that it was actually the father who seemed in the play who insisted that the family moved from Thailand to America. So in some way, Visarut and Tasani, a little bit unwilling immigrants. And obviously Felix and Delia, unwilling immigrants. So that's one kind of alienation you explore. What are the other kinds of alienation you explore in the play?
Well, yeah, this idea of ghosts also being displaced, right? So the idea of being displaced from the world and going on to whatever that next place is another kind of this exploration of mortality, right?
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Max, the character who is the central character who seems most displaced in one way, even though he's very comfortable, it seems, within Western culture, but he seems to have alienated himself from his ancestry and his background.
Yeah.
I don't know what my question is. There's no question to that. Mm-hmm. I'm just showing you how I read the play.
That's great. But I'll say that the sort of like trying to divorce yourself from one's culture thing is not necessarily an uncommon thing among children of immigrants. It's like, especially children of and this is just speaking from personal experience growing up again in Indiana in the 70s, where you're the only Asian kid, and where where sort of like your role models around you, there are no other Asian role models, and then on television there are no Asian role models, and if you do have them, they're very stereotypical. So and then you also watch your mother and your father getting made fun of for being immigrants and their accents and all that stuff. So it just kind of manifests in sort of trying to push that part of you away for a very long time. And yeah, and when I was growing up, I really did not identify with that part of myself and really wanted to divorce myself from that. And it wasn't until I went to college in San Francisco, where there was a much larger diverse population and Asians, and it's like, oh, there's actually other people like me around the world. And so I was able to kind of like make peace almost with that part of myself and actually be interested in that part of myself. But even today, many years later, I still struggle because I struggle with the language, and I take those Thai lessons with a tutor, and then like if I skip a week, I forget all of it. So I don't know. And it's always interesting to kind of be in situations where there's a lot of Thai speaking people. because and I think for those of you, I assume some of you have traveled around the world, but you can feel such a sense of disempowerment when you're in a different country and you don't speak the language, and everybody else speaks the language, and it can feel very you can feel very displaced and disempowered because of it, right?
Do you see yourself in Max in terms of your journey in this regard?
Yeah, I mean, the standard thing that I always say about all my plays is that they absolutely have nothing to do with me at all. but probably close to the truth, probably all the characters have a little bit to do with me.
Yeah.
This play has two brothers, and then the AI play I was telling you about also is about two brothers. Interesting fact is that I actually don't have a brother. I have a sister, but I don't have a brother. And I've been trying to figure out why this dynamic is interesting to me. And
Maybe
I think
you wanted a brother.
I don't think it's that. I think it's I'm almost kind of having a conversation with two different parts of myself. So like myself now and sort of like an earlier version of me.
Yeah, love that. When you look at Max's journey through this play in terms of coming to, and I would say, I mean, he comes to accept a lot of things, and I don't want to, of course, spoil anything for anybody about what he does come to come to accept. What do you think it is that makes him, I don't know if you can put your finger on it, what is it that makes him really embrace his Thai Americanness?
I think it's really recognizing on a deep level what his brother and mother went through. It's sort of like having a deep empathy for their experience, and I think it's only at that point can he really be interested in that history and sort of like why they are the way they are. But then he also comes to realize that the way they are also informs who he is, right?
Speaking of informing who he is, a lot of ancestry in terms of cultural background is one thing that you look at. This is the best part about this play, is that you're going to come and see this play and you're going to be like, oh, I just enjoyed that story. I wasn't really thinking about it. And then you're going to go home and you're going to be like, oh my God, it operates on so many different levels. So one of the, in addition to cultural ancestry, there's the question of mental health and what you inherit.
Sure.
You've got a couple of characters, and I won't again talk about who they are. A couple of characters both have mothers who suffer from some form of mental illness.
Yeah.
I think you do. I think you posit the question of whether mental illness, the question of whether mental illness is a physical illness or a spiritual illness, and is that sort of part of the East-West divide about questions of mental illness?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely part of the East-West divide. I mean, just give you an example. I mean, I think just as a general statement, I think that the East and West treat mental illness in very different ways, right? And just speaking from my own personal experience, I have an uncle who some time back suffered from what could be considered here in the West as schizophrenia, like he was hearing voices and things like that, to the point where he was just really not functional. And instead of my family having him seek medical help or psychological help, they actually drove really far to get him to a Thai monk who was known for kind of dealing with these types of situations, because they really saw this as more of a spiritual disease than anything else. And so, Thai monk did what he did. And, my uncle is fine today. He runs a burger restaurant. So, and he's okay. So who's to say? I mean, I don't know. I don't necessarily believe in all the kind of Thai monk healing stuff, but I don't necessarily also think that it's not.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think letting that question be bubble throughout this play is one of the things that makes it so powerful, and certainly one of the things that made me want to program it. And I always talk about, I'm interested in plays that ask questions and don't answer questions, and I think that's certainly one, what's real and what's not. on a podcast, you were asked, I thought it was not a great podcast, not because of you.
Yeah.
You're really good about talking about your work, by the way.
Thank you.
Are you sick of talking about your plays?
Nah, I love it.
All right, good. But one of the questions that you got asked was, it was a very smart question. Would you rather be in a gambling casino or a haunted house for 24 hours? Do you remember what you said?
I don't even remember this podcast, but I'm guessing that I said casino.
You sure did.
Okay.
Yeah. You sure did.
Blackjack, man. I can be there for days, yes.
Gambling. So gambling is something that comes up a lot in the play. Games of luck and chance. Can you talk about why that lives in this play?
Yeah. So my parents, when I was a kid, so we from Indiana, we moved to California at the age of 7. So once we were in California, my parents every few months would actually drive us and the family to Las Vegas. A lot, and they would, and then they would drop me off at the arcade with a roll of quarters, and then they would go gamble. And it was like the best thing in the world, like to have like a roll of quarters to play arcade games. But yeah, I've always had a fondness for Vegas, and then I have a lot of friends who don't like Vegas because it's very gaudy, and it is. But I think if you give into it, you could have a good time, and I give into it every time. So I love it.
Well, I will leave it to everybody who watches tonight to sort of make the connection between gambling and, gambling and all the various themes of the play. Are there themes of the play that I missed? Oh yeah, we haven't really talked about sort of grief and loss. Why did you choose Katrina? Do you know? And maybe this is a dumb question because maybe you write just. Some people write they have a great strategy, a very specific strategy before they go into it. Some people really, it's whatever comes to their mind. Was Katrina, did you think before setting this 2 years after Katrina and making that couple Katrina survivors, did you think about that specifically beforehand, or did that just come up?
I think that came up when I was kind of dealing with these themes of displacement, and sort of also around the time that I was writing it. I was visiting New Orleans a bit also. I just loved the first time I visited. I kept going back just to vacation, but this was several years after Katrina, and it was so interesting to see the city, so vibrant, but then also you could also see things that Katrina left behind. I remember specifically seeing. I went on this kind of like a tour thing. And they had went to a neighborhood that was like really devastated by Katrina, and I saw the image that really stuck with me was this open field, and there was like a front porch, like stairs leading up to a front porch, and then the front porch leading to nothing because the house had been just basically wiped off the property. And that was sort of like an interesting image that really stuck with me. And I really thought about that city and the people living there, and sort of like the idea of just like this physical structure being wiped off the face of the earth. Yeah.
Speaking of New Orleans, I learned last night that you are currently at work, and I don't think you're going to tell us much, on a sequel to The Brothers Paranormal that is set partly in New Orleans and partly in Santa Barbara,
Yeah.
where I went to grad school.
Oh. Yeah.
I can tell you all about Santa Barbara. Sure. So what made you decide to start working on a sequel?
Oh, okay. So after I wrote The Brothers Paranormal, it took so long to get up. I was like, and also I said about The Brothers Paranormal, this is sort of like a culmination of all of my lifelong obsessions and themes and characters and stuff that I really don't think I said after this play, I have anything else to say, really. Mm-hmm. Really? So yeah,
like at all,
all. Like what else is there? This is all. This is it. This is it.
It's a good play, but
yes,
I think you have more to say.
So I very publicly announced that I was quitting playwriting.
Really?
Yeah. So I like there's
when
nothing.
Was this?
This was several years ago. And I was like, this is it. This is my last play. I have nothing else to say. It takes 10 years to produce a play anyway. I'm not getting any younger. I got other things to do. I want to hang out. I want, whatever. So I publicly quit. And then 3 theaters, Perseverance Theater in Alaska, East West Players in Los Angeles, and Theater Moo in Minneapolis, said, we would like to co-commission you to write a sequel to The Brothers Paranormal, because we had heard that you thought that maybe, like during a talk back, somebody asked, oh, what happens to these characters afterwards? And I had an idea of what happened to them. And they said, oh, we like that idea. We would like to commission you to write the sequel to this play. And then I felt like I couldn't say no. I felt like I couldn't say no. So I didn't say no, so I said yes. And then shortly after that, another theater commissioned me to write this play about artificial intelligence. And I couldn't say no to that because it was a really interesting topic. And then shortly after that, the theater, one of the current theaters that's producing the Oscar series of theater of plays, which tour, wanted to actually make a full-length formal musical of the Oscar series. So after I officially announced my retirement, it turned out to be the best marketing I've ever done, because I got 3 commissions right after that. So I'm going to quit like every year.
Yeah, oh, I'm really done this time.
Yes.
Is most of the work that you have done before Brothers Paranormal, was most of that work done by a commission, or were you writing and sending and writing and sending?
I think so. I think in terms of full-length plays, I think I've had probably like 6, 7, or 8 different full-length plays produced, and I think of those, the first was not a commission because it was like my first play ever, and then maybe one other one was not, but then everything else has been a commission, which is great. I mean, which is great for a playwright, definitely.
What makes a commission agreement really good? Obviously, aside from the money, what makes a good commission relationship? I'm asking for a friend.
I think
like, here's some money, call us in a few years, or here's some money, please, let's talk every month. Seriously.
I think here's some money and let us know how we can support you. Yeah, I think, one of the commissions I'm working on, they're very hands off. The other commission I'm working on, they're a little bit more hands on and asking questions and seeing where I'm at and all that stuff. And I don't like that pressure. So, so I like the hands off, and I check in with them. And if I need something, I kind of reach out. So yeah, and sometimes it's just kind of time away to write. Sometimes, sometimes it's I don't know, a little bit of dramaturgical help here and there, or table read here and there. It depends. I think all different writers are different in terms of what they need. But then also that say that some writers don't necessarily know what they need. So who knows?
Had you actually succeeded in quitting as a playwright, would you have continued teaching writing? Because you teach through East West. You teach also at.
I used to teach at USC.
You used to teach at USC. Yep. You might have.
Maybe I love teaching, but kind of like formal. I don't know how many of you work in formal academia, but formal academia. Whew. I mean, it's some people don't think. I don't know. It's as corporate as anything else. So it wasn't really for me. Like just like every week was like this show with Kerry Washington called Scandal. Every week was like an episode of Scandal, and I was Kerry Washington, and I was like getting really good at the politics, and I didn't like getting really good at the politics. It was so I left that job a while back.
You can be honest here in this question, in answering this question that I'm about to ask. Was part of your thinking, maybe this is my last play, was part of your thinking sort of having doubts about the, I don't know, impact or efficacy of theater as a form? Were you like in that place, or were you in a place of just, I want to go hang out and not sit in my room and sit in my house and write all the time?
So two things. One, it was like when am I going to learn to become a magician? It takes time to do that. So that's one. But two, I don't know that I've ever felt that way about theater. Like I when I started playwriting in the 90s, they were already saying back then, theater is dying and theater is dead, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then when you read sort of like essays by these playwrights from back in the day, from the 70s and the 60s and the 50s even, they were talking about, everybody saying that theater is dead. They've been saying theater is dead from the very beginning of theater. So theater is not going away. It morphs, it evolves, and all that. And I know that all theater, I'm not naive. I know that theaters across the country are having a tough time just in terms of getting people back into the theater, but it's not a theater specific issue, because box office receipts at the movies are down. People are canceling their streaming services, so it's not just a theater problem. So I don't like it when people try to make it seem like everything else is hunky dory and theater is the only place with an issue. Everybody's having an issue for different reasons, and some of the same reasons that overlap. But times are tough for all forms of arts and entertainment.
Yeah. If you were given the opportunity to, some genie came down and said, you can have all the money you want and only ever write for theater, or all the money you want only ever write for the screen, a screen, whether it's TV, film, anything that's not live, which would you choose?
All the money in the world?
No, all the money that you want.
Oh, all the money in the world.
You don't get all the money in the world.
I don't know that I could choose. I mean, it depends on sort of like what I would necessarily have most control over. I mean, I think there's a lot of questions that I have about that question, because it's like, well, who am I? Am I operating my own theater? Am I operating my own studio? Am I under am I under contract by certain people? Are there certain it depends on the parameters, I think. But theater is sort of like my lifelong career and love. So this is what I know.
I will tell you that the genie would have been like, all right, I'm done with you. I'm not giving you this option. Too many questions.
I can ask for a fourth wish. Can I ask for more wishes?
How have you been surprised by audiences for this play? Or have there been moments that you're like, oh, that's not at all what I thought was going to happen, or a reaction that you got, some feedback that you got that surprised you about this play?
Yeah, I mean, I think the play hits people in different ways. So I think I'm always surprised by the swath of different kinds of reactions that come up from people. So people sometimes just kind of respond on a very kind of like sort of like plot stylistic level. Some people really gravitate towards certain characters and certain themes. So I think sort of like the variety of responses is really great.
That's great. Good. Well, I want to make sure that we leave a little bit of time. I know that you all have not seen the play, but you can tell Prince is delightful and wonderful and very smart. So are there any questions that you would like to ask this living playwright right here in our midst?
How would you describe Thai Asian attitudes toward paranormal? In America, a lot of people who grow up, this Houdini, and then how he went through and disproved,
Yeah.
that you're faking it under the table. There's no ghosts, there's no this. How has it felt in Asia? Is it similar? Is it?
No, I mean, I think it's. I think I think Asian cultures are way more open and way more believing. Some people here call it superstition, but it is part of kind of like.
So almost superstition is real itself.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I think I was looking at the program, and I saw one of the things said that here in the United States, 46% of people kind of believe in ghosts.
46%.
Yeah. Which I think in the dramaturgical note said it's not very many people believe in ghosts here in the United States. But I think 46% is pretty high. I was like, man, that many people in the United States believe in ghosts. But I think maybe many of the 46% are maybe Asians. So, but I think the belief in sort of like ghosts and the afterlife and kind of these questions of spirits, way more prominent in Asian cultures, definitely.
I'm not going to say, I'm not going to say who, but I think it's sort of delightful that of our two co-directors, only one believes in ghosts and the other doesn't. So,
Yes.
was that a helpful tension, co-director?
No, it was a nightmare. Because we kept, well, most of the cast too, I think, we went around and asked. And so I set my goal out to convince Aria that ghosts were real, but she still doesn't believe. And I'm just like, you're gonna be sorry, because one day something's gonna happen and I'm not gonna be around.
If you all haven't met Hallie Gordon, our Senior Associate Artistic Director, relatively new, well, now it's like
Almost a year.
almost a year,
Yeah. I know.
and her first directing here at Olney. So, yes. Other questions, which can also come from members of the team as well as people who don't know. Bear in the back.
How much control do you like to have over casting?
I mean, I think it depends on which production it is. I think for the first production, I want to be part of the process as much as possible, because with a first production, I'm rewriting and still working on the play throughout rehearsal up until opening night. So beyond the first production, though, that's the production, that's the play that gets printed and published and kind of goes off to other places. So I'm able to kind of leave it in Hallie and Aria and Jason's hands, and it's fine, because that is the play, and I don't have to really work on it anymore. But I think for the first production, I definitely want to have a lot of input.
Yeah, great, good question. Yes.
So I gather this is going to be a fearful experience for audiences and protagonists in particular. Did you ever consider writing something for everything as a positive experience with ghosts that you like, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, yes, maybe.
the question.
Perhaps there's some of that in this play as well.
The
Perhaps.
question was,
Yeah.
the Hal's question was, if this play sounds like it's going to have not happy ghosts, have you ever considered writing a play with happy ghosts? But not Casper. Athena, not Casper. Although Casper is mentioned here in the play.
There was a TV show on when I was a kid where the ghost inhabited this house. They died in a skiing accident, and the new inhabitant of that apartment, the only one who could see that.
Oh, what show is this?
Topper? What? Topper? Topper.
Topper.
Cool.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the name. Oswald Topper was and George and Marion were.
That sounds fun. Sounds fun.
So it was very positive. Kind of
Yeah.
sort of like it.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, that's another whether it was for.
Maybe
That's a
Hal,
good idea.
you'll make a big donation and we'll commission Prince to adapt Topper, the happy ghost play.
That's a promise.
Other questions? Yes.
You said you've gone to all the productions. Have you been happy with all the productions, or were there any where you thought, well, that's not really the message I wanted to get across, or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think all the productions have been pretty strong, and some better than others.
Very kind. How does it help you to go visit different productions? And how is it going to help you actually, as you're currently writing the sequel to this,
Yeah.
you happen to be here right now? How
Yeah.
is that going to help you?
I mean, being able to experience the story with an audience over and over again, I begin to notice things that I didn't necessarily notice before. Because that is, kind of like when you're creating something, a lot of it is conscious, but part of it is subconscious, and some of it is there for reasons that you might not necessarily know at the beginning, right? There's stuff in here that will resonate really well in the sequel that's already here that I didn't necessarily realize before. So it's helpful to kind of see again and again.
As many of you know that I used to be, before I came to Olney, I was executive director of a group called the National New Play Network, which is an advocacy organization for theaters that tend to be devoted to new plays. And their flagship program, NPN's flagship program, is a thing called the Rolling World Premiere. And Brothers Paranormal had a kind of informal Rolling World Premiere, actually, as I recall. And that's basically, instead of what you have sometimes see a co-production when the same production, the very same actors, the same design, travels from theater to theater in different places of the country, the Rolling World Premiere is designed to give the playwright to see 3 at least completely different productions, completely different actors with different community responses, different directorial takes on a show. And the aim, of course, is that the playwright sees things that they had not thought about in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Along those sorts of lines, do you like to workshop your plays? And if so, at what point in your process?
I do.
Asking for a friend.
Yes, I do. They're helpful for me. So with the Brothers Paranormal sequel, which is called Paranormal Inside, I'm in the process of finishing up the first draft. But before I turn in the first draft to the theater, I'm actually going to do a private kind of like living room reading just for myself to hear it with some actors, and then I'll kind of do like a final pass before turning in that first draft. And then after that, probably a bigger table read with maybe a director and some actors and some of the theaters involved. And then after that, sort of like a public reading. But there's such a thing in the theater that it's a term in the theater called workshopping something to death. So there is kind of like diminishing returns once you get to a certain point, right? So before the Brothers Paranormal was ever produced, I had a series of stage readings, just unplanned by different theaters around the country, probably like 7 or 8 stage readings before it actually got produced, because it's theaters say that the stage reading is to benefit the playwright so they could see it in front of an audience, but it really for a lot of theaters is an audition, and so
Which is why we don't do stage readings.
yeah, so it's great to hear maybe 1 or 2 times, but I didn't really need 8 stage readings to kind of develop the play. I maybe needed 1 or 2. And then to hear it and then kind of develop it further, but I understand what the game is, so it's fine.
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, this is your time, not mine. I'm going to dinner with Prince. I can ask him later.
So at what age did you decide you wanted to be a playwright? That's what you wanted. And what age did you decide you wanted to be a magician as well?
So playwright specifically, probably in college, I kind of decided playwriting specifically, but I'd always wanted to be a writer, definitely. So when I was younger, I as we all did when we were younger, we played with stuffed animals and action figures and stuff like that. So I did that a lot when I was way past the point in terms of age that I should have been playing with stuffed animals, but I would put on shows with my own kind of like repertory company of stuffed animals actors, which was kind of like early signs of this, which is kind of just the direct parallel. But yeah, when I was a kid, like I was drawing comics. I made album covers also. My repertory company of actors, they had other jobs. Some of them were singers and they had their own albums, so I would like create album covers. And so then, yes. So then when I got into middle school, I started writing short stories. And then when I got into high school, I started writing more short stories and then writing scenes of dialogue. And then when I got to college, it got a little bit more expansive in terms of like what I was thinking about and more specific when I was thinking about it. Yeah.
And magic? What age were you when you started?
Oh, always interested in magic. So Jason, you had earlier said, one of my themes that I deal with in all my work is sort of like the tension between what is real and what is not, between reality and fantasy. And I know that I had said that. I've said that many times in interviews and podcasts and stuff like that. But it's actually not an observation that I had initially made. So sort of like me being able to talk about my work is not necessarily because of me. So several years ago, I was at a dinner with a bunch of different theater artists, and one of my mentor from grad school, her name is Bridget Mullins, amazing playwright. You have to read a play of hers called Rare Bird. It doesn't get done very much. One of the best plays I've ever seen in my life. Bridget Mullins, yeah, rare play, great play. It's about the world's oldest living Vegas showgirl. It's fantastic. Really great play. The most beautiful language, like when I see stuff, I don't necessarily like cry at sort of like events that happen in a play or in a movie or in a TV show. I cry when I kind of like really experience something beautiful that is said. And that play just had me like in tears throughout it. It's just so beautifully poetic. Anyway, my mentor from grad school, she asked the table, she said, what is everybody's first kind of theatrical memory? And I had to think about this, and I was like, my first theatrical, and she said, you can interpret that however you want, right? Some people said they were in a show, when they were a kid, in middle school, or sometimes in grade school, they were part of a pageant or a church or something. And I had remembered, for some reason, I said, oh, I remember when I was in middle school, there was a talent show, and my friend and I went and performed magic in this talent show because I was really fascinated by people like David Copperfield when I was a kid. There was a bunch of David Copperfield specials on TV, and I loved magic and the idea of magic. And it was a really horrible performance because we were trying to do close-up magic in a huge cafeteria auditorium, and nobody could see anything that we were doing. So I was like, look at this card, and nobody could see the card. So I was like, oh, that was my first theatrical memory. And she said, oh, well, that makes sense because every single one of your plays, no matter what it is, has to deal with the tension between what is real and what is not, what is fantasy and what is reality. And I was like, it blew me away because I'd never seen that in my own work before. My first play is called Big Hunk of Burnin' Love, and it's about a 29-year-old Thai-American man who, because of a strange family curse, must get married by his 30th birthday or he is doomed to spontaneously combust. So that play is also about, do you believe in this family curse or do you not believe in the family curse? And then this play about invisibility, it's sort of like, is this invisibility real? Is it not? I wrote a play about a superhero, and it's like, does he actually have superpowers or does he not? So this is a recurring theme, and it's always been interesting to me. And so I've been interested in magic. I love prank shows. So that too, that kind of like not real thing. Yeah.
Did you watch Jury Duty?
I have not yet. I'm so excited about Jury Duty. I'm so excited, but I'm very excited about it.
Yeah. Well, we are just about at time, but is there anybody have one last quick question? I've already heard from you,
Yeah.
but no. Anybody else? All right, then we give it to you.
Have you ever met someone who wrote one play, meaning a playwright, and it was great, and then never again could? I mean,
Like a one-hit wonder?
Yeah.
one hit wonder.
I mean, I think that there are a lot of examples of that. I mean, Margaret Edson, who wrote Wit, like she was like I think their kindergarten teacher, and she wrote one play, won the Pulitzer, and then that's it. She went away, and that was it. And that was interesting. Yeah, I think there's some examples of that. Definitely. Yeah. Are you thinking of writing one play?
Like 10. I don't know.
Thank you all so much. Prince, thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. All right.
Oh, hi. Nice to meet you. Okay, great. Yes. Okay, great.
Well, so yeah.